The envelope lands on the mahogany table with a soft thud that might as well be a gunshot. I'm sitting in the Carter family dining room, the one with the chandelier that costs more than most people's cars, surrounded by crystal glasses that catch the light like tiny knives. My mother-in-law, Margaret Carter, sits across from me in her perfectly tailored cream suit, manicured fingers still resting on that envelope. My father-in-law, Thomas, swirls his wine glass, eyes carefully avoiding mine, and my husband, Liam, sits beside me, close enough to touch but a million miles away. Consider it compensation, Maggie says, her voice smooth as silk and twice as cold, for wasting my son's prime years. I can't breathe. My hand moves on instinct to my stomach, just below the table where they can't see, pressing against the place where I know a tiny heartbeat is growing. 10 weeks and 2 days. I counted this morning. Maggie's perfectly painted lips curve into something that isn't quite a smile. You're barren, Olivia. My son needs a real wife, not a dead branch on the family tree. Take the money, sign the papers, and disappear. Tonight. Barren. The word hangs in the air like poison. I turn to Liam, searching his face for something, anything. Shock, protest, love. But he won't look at me. His jaw is clenched, his eyes fixed on the table like it holds the secrets of the universe. He doesn't say a single word. That silence cuts deeper than his mother's cruelty ever could. They have no idea what they're doing. They think they're discarding a nobody, a mousy bank analyst who got lucky and married up. They don't know that the woman they're trying to buy off for $175,000 owns 38% of their precious Carter Group. And they definitely don't know that the barren wife they're throwing out is carrying the heir they're so desperate for. I looked down at that check and I smiled. They thought they were ending my story, but they were actually writing their own ending. If your in-laws offered you $175,000 to disappear, would you take it, tear it up, or do something else entirely? Tell me in the comments, because what I did next changed everything. My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 32 years old, and I'm about to teach the most powerful family in Austin, Texas, a lesson they'll never forget. But to understand how we got here, you need to know who I really am. And just 12 hours before that envelope hit the table, I was planning the happiest surprise of my life. To understand exactly what the Carters threw away that night, you need to know where I came from. I grew up in a two-bedroom apartment in South Austin with my dad, Marcus Hart. My mother left when I was 3, and I don't remember her face, just the faint smell of vanilla perfume that lingered for weeks after she was gone. Dad raised me alone while building something extraordinary. He was a venture capitalist before the term became fashionable, one of those rare minds who could see potential where others saw only risk. We lived modestly with secondhand furniture, library books, and thrift store clothes because Dad believed wealth should be a tool, not a costume. He'd take me to his office on Saturdays, letting me sit in the corner with crayons while he analyzed spreadsheets that turned thousands into millions. He taught me to read numbers the way other kids read picture books. By the time I was 16, I could analyze a balance sheet faster than most MBA graduates. Money is loud, Liv, he'd tell me, but wealth, real wealth, is silent. When I was 25, Dad's plane went down over the Gulf of Mexico. Engine failure. No survivors. The world I knew shattered in an instant, and I was left standing in the wreckage trying to figure out who I was supposed to be without him. At the reading of his will, I sat in a leather chair too big for my grief, surrounded by lawyers in expensive suits. They slid documents across the table, one after another. Trusts, holdings, offshore accounts, shell companies with names I'd never heard of. Miss Hart, the senior attorney said, adjusting his glasses, you are now the sole beneficial owner of approximately $2.3 billion in diversified assets. The number didn't feel real. It still doesn't sometimes. I was 25 years old, an orphan, and suddenly one of the wealthiest women in Texas. But I remember what Dad wrote in his final letter to me, the one they handed over last. Olivia, hide your crown until you meet someone who loves the girl, not the gold. People will love you for your money or hate you for it. The rare ones who love you for you, those are the ones you test. And if they fail the test, baby girl, you walk. Your heart. We don't beg. So I became just Olivia. I took a mid-level analyst job at Lone Star Financial. Nothing flashy. I rented a decent apartment, drove a 5-year-old Honda, and wore Target cardigans. I let my father's trusts run themselves under the management of Danny Cho, my father's former protege, and the only person who knew the truth. I wanted to feel normal. I wanted someone who'd love me for the woman folding laundry on Sunday nights, not the billionaire hiding in plain sight. That's when I met Liam Carter. It was a Tuesday in April, 3 years after Dad died. Liam walked into the bank for a meeting about Carter Group's commercial long portfolio. He was charming, with sandy brown hair, an easy smile, and a suit that fit just right but wasn't ostentatious. He made small talk while waiting, asked about my day, remembered my name. When he came back the following week, he asked me to coffee. I said yes. We dated for 8 months with simple dates like food trucks, hiking, and dive bars with live music. He worked insane hours as a project manager at his family company, and I loved that he didn't need me to entertain him. He'd fall asleep on my couch after 16-hour days, his head in my lap, and I'd think, this is what I wanted. He admired my down-to-earth life. He'd joke about how refreshing it was to date someone who wasn't obsessed with status. I smiled because my test was working, or so I thought. The first crack in my fairy tale appeared the day I met Margaret Carter. Maggie didn't hug me at our first meeting. She shook my hand. It was one of those handshakes that's technically polite, but cold enough to freeze water. We were at the Carter estate in Westlake Hills, sprawling, pristine, and intimidating. Liam had been nervous all morning, straightening his collar and coaching me on what to say. Mom can be particular, he said. Just be yourself. But Maggie didn't want myself. She wanted a pedigree. She sat across from me in her sunroom, sipping tea from china so delicate I was afraid to breathe near it. She asked questions like a prosecutor. What do your parents do, Olivia? My father passed away. My mother left when I was 3. A flicker of something crossed her face. Maybe pity, maybe disdain. I see. And your career? I am a financial analyst. How practical. The word landed like a knife. Thomas, Liam's father, cleared his throat from behind the Wall Street Journal. He didn't intervene. He never did. After we left, Liam kissed my forehead and said, "See, that went fine." It hadn't. But I loved him, so I ignored the warning bells ringing in my gut. We married 6 months later, small ceremony at the estate. Maggie smiled for photos, but when she hugged me briefly and stiffly, she whispered in my ear, "Don't embarrass this family." The pressure started immediately. At our first dinner as a married couple, Maggie looked pointedly at my flat stomach. "So, when can we expect grandchildren? Liam's 32, the clock is ticking." I laughed it off. Liam squeezed my hand under the table. But she didn't stop. Every gathering, every phone call. "Any news? Have you seen a doctor? Fertility declines after 30, you know." We tried. God, we tried. Month after month of negative tests, of holding my breath and hoping. Then 8 months in, 2 pink lines. I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes, purely from joy. I miscarried at 11 weeks. The grief was unbearable. It felt like my body had betrayed me. I took a week off work and barely left the bedroom. Liam held me while I sobbed, but he didn't know what to say. Men rarely do. Maggie sent flowers. The card read, "These things happen. Better luck next time." Better luck, like I'd failed a driving test. We tried fertility treatments next, hormones that made me feel insane, injections that bruised my stomach, doctor's offices with posters about hope and miracles that just made me feel empty. Nothing worked. And with every failed cycle, Maggie's comments grew sharper. Maybe it's stress. Liam's cousin just had twins, strong genes, not like some. Some women just aren't built for this. Liam started working longer hours, avoiding the topic. When I'd try to talk, he'd look away and change the subject to business. One night, I went downstairs for water and heard voices in Liam's study. The door was cracked. Maggie's voice low and venomous. Divorce is cleaner than infertility, Liam. We can spin divorce. We can't spin a barren wife. Mom, please, do you want a family or not? Because she can't give you one. I stood in the hallway, water glass trembling, waiting for Liam to defend me, waiting for him to shout, to kick her out, to say he chose me. He sighed. That's all, just a tired, defeated sigh. I went back upstairs and cried silently in the bathroom so he wouldn't hear. Have you ever been blamed for something that wasn't your fault? Especially something about your body? How did you handle it? Let me know, because I was about to reach my breaking point. A week later, I asked him, "Will you still want me if we never have kids?" He was nodding his tie, wouldn't look at me. Don't talk like that. Mom's just stressed. But she wasn't, and part of him agreed with her. I took another pregnancy test one morning just to torture myself. Negative. I stared at that single line and whispered, maybe she's right. I didn't know that 3 months later, everything would change. The morning of the dinner, the day my life imploded, I woke up nauseous. Not stress nausea. This was different, deeper. I lay in bed, hand on my stomach, counting back days. We'd stopped trying 2 months ago. Stopped timing, stopped obsessing. I'd actually felt lighter. On a whim, maybe hope, maybe denial, I dug out a pregnancy test from the back of the bathroom cabinet, one left from a bulk pack bought in more optimistic days. I didn't let myself think, just peed on the stick and set it on the counter. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, counted to 60. 2 pink lines, clear, bold, unmistakable. I sat on the cold tile floor and stared for 10 full minutes. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. I took a photo, then another. I needed proof this wasn't a hallucination. At 10 a.m., I called Dr. Patel's office and begged for a same-day appointment. Her nurse squeezed me in at 2 p.m. Dr. Patel ran a blood test, then brought in the ultrasound machine. The screen flickered to life, grainy and gray. And then there it was, a tiny rhythmic flicker, a heartbeat. "Congratulations, Olivia," she said, smiling. "You're about 10 weeks along. Everything looks healthy. Sometimes the body just needs time." I cried right there on the exam table. Happy tears this time. I left with an ultrasound printout and a plan. Tonight. I'd tell Liam tonight. I stopped at a boutique and bought a small cream box with a satin ribbon. Inside, I placed the ultrasound photo and a note that read, "Daddy, see you in 7 months. Love, baby Hart Carter." When I got home, Rosa, the Carters' longtime housekeeper, was tidying the kitchen. She'd always been kind to me, with extra sugar in my coffee and gentle smiles when Maggie wasn't looking. "Miss Olivia," she said softly, "you look happy today." I couldn't help it. I grinned. "I am, Rosa, for the first time in a long time." She studied my face, then nodded knowingly. She didn't ask, just said, "Eat something, mija. You need your strength." At 6 p.m., Maggie called. "Olivia, darling." The word dripped with false sweetness. "Thomas and I would love to have you and Liam for dinner tonight, 7 o'clock. I hesitated. I'd planned a quiet night at home, but then I thought, what better stage for the announcement? Liam's parents there to witness the miracle? Maybe this baby would finally bridge the gap. I said, "We'll be there." I dressed carefully in a silk wrap dress that skimmed my waist. I tucked the little gift box in my purse. Liam picked me up at 6:45, distracted and checking his phone. Did Mom say this was about? No, maybe she just wants to see us. We pulled up to the estate just as the sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky in golds and violets. I touched the box in my purse one more time, my heart swelling with anticipation. We walked inside, and that's when I saw the look on Maggie's face, the triumphant, cruel set of her jaw. The envelope slid across the table, Maggie's words about the barren branch, Liam's silence, and the little box in my purse, the one that was supposed to save us, stayed hidden while my marriage died in front of me. I don't remember leaving the estate. One moment I was standing in that dining room, the torn envelope in my hand, Maggie's voice echoing words like barren, worthless, take the money, and the next I was sitting in the back of a taxi, streetlights blurring past the window like streaks of neon rain. The driver glanced at me in the rear view. "You okay, miss?" I shook my head. I couldn't speak. I looked down at the check in my lap. $175,000. Compensation for wasting her son's prime years. That's what I was worth to them. A used car. A bad investment write-off. I started laughing. It came out broken, manic, somewhere between a sob and a scream. "Take me to 1200 Lavaca Street," I told the driver. "The Austonian Tower." 20 minutes later, we pulled up in front of one of the most exclusive residential buildings in downtown Austin. The doorman recognized me immediately because I'd bought the penthouse 2 years ago, right after Dad's estate settled, but I'd never moved in. It sat empty, a secret I'd kept even from Liam, waiting for a someday that never came. Until now. I rode the elevator to the 54th floor. The doors opened directly into my apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire glittering city. Minimalist furniture, untouched, waiting. I walked to the window and pressed my forehead against the cool glass. Below, the city lights sparkled, indifferent to my pain. My phone buzzed. A text from Liam that read, "Liv, please, can we talk?" I stared at it. Then I blocked his number. I called Danny. He answered on the first ring. "Liv, what's wrong?" "They paid me $175,000 to leave." My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. His mother handed me a check and told me I'm barren, told me to disappear. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "Where are you?" "The penthouse. I'll be there in 20. He arrived in 15. Danny Cho was my father's right hand, and he was the closest thing to family I had left. He hugged me while I broke down completely, sobbing into his expensive suit jacket. When I finally pulled back, he sat beside me on the white sofa. "Tell me everything," he asked gently. I did. The dinner, the envelope, Maggie's words, Liam's silence. And then, voice breaking, I told him about the baby. His eyes widened. "Liv?" "10 weeks," I whispered, clutching my stomach. "I found out this morning. I was going to tell him tonight." "What do you want to do?" he asked gently. I looked at him. I wiped the tears from my face, and something hard settled in my chest. "I want them to pay." He nodded slowly. "Okay, how?" "Carter Group. How leveraged are they?" Danny's expression shifted from concern to calculation. He understood immediately. "Very. They've been refinancing debt for years to fund new developments. If the right pressure points were squeezed, squeeze them." "Liv, are you sure?" "I'm serious, Danny. They called me Barren while I'm carrying their heir. They treated me like trash because they thought I was poor. I want to watch their empire crumble." He studied me for a long moment, then pulled out his tablet. "The trusts already hold some positions that intersect with Carter Group's financing. If we consolidate, if we acquire controlling interest in Heartstone Holdings, do it." For the next 3 hours, we sat at my dining table and mapped it out. Danny pulled up financial records, shareholder registries, and loan agreements. We identified their weak points, over-leveraged developments, credit lines with adjustable rates, and key suppliers they depended on. By 2 a.m., we had a plan. Surgical, devastating, invisible. After Danny left, I stood at the window again, watching the sunrise paint the sky pink. My phone had 17 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Maggie, Thomas, maybe Liam. I deleted them all. I placed my hand on my stomach. "Don't worry, little one," I whispered to the empty room. "They threw us out. Now we decide who gets to stay." 4 months passed like a slow-burning fuse. While I grew rounder and stronger, living quietly in my penthouse sanctuary with a team of private doctors Danny hired, the Carter empire began to fracture. It started small: a credit line that didn't renew, an interest rate that ticked up, a key supplier who suddenly couldn't deliver materials on time. Nothing catastrophic, just friction. Danny visited twice a week with updates, spreading financial reports across my dining table like battle maps. "Heartstone now controls 38% of Carter Group's voting shares," he said one afternoon. I was 6 months pregnant by then, one hand resting on my belly where the baby kicked. "What about their West Lake development project?" I asked. "Stalled. The construction loan came up for renewal. We approved it, but with new terms. Higher rate, shorter timeline." Good. Across town, the Carters were panicking. Maggie showed up at the office, snapping at assistants. Thomas stared at spreadsheets, looking older each week. And Liam was drowning, working 18-hour days to save a ship I was actively sinking. Then, in my 7th month, Danny arrived with news that made my blood sing. "Emergency board meeting, Tuesday. Heartstone has requested governance changes and a vote of no confidence." I looked up from my yoga mat. "I want to be there." "Liv, you're 7 months pregnant." "Exactly. I want her to see me walk through that door." Tuesday came. I dressed in a tailored black maternity dress with Dad's watch on my wrist. Danny drove me to Carter Group headquarters. We rode the elevator to the top floor. Through the glass boardroom walls, I could see them: 15 board members, executives in suits, and at the head of the table, Maggie and Thomas. Maggie wore cream, face tight with stress. Thomas looked gray. Liam sat halfway down, shoulders hunched. Danny squeezed my hand. "Ready?" More than ready. He pushed open the door. The room fell silent, every head turned. Maggie's expression froze. Thomas stood, then sat back down, confused. Liam looked at me like he was seeing a ghost, his eyes dropping to my belly, face going white. I walked to the front, Danny beside me. "Good morning," I said, voice calm and clear. "I'm Olivia Hart, beneficial owner of Heartstone Holdings. Thank you for coming." Danny plugged a USB drive into the projection system. A slide appeared, showing Heartstone Holdings' logo, and beneath it, a shareholder breakdown revealing 38% of Carter Group. Another slide showed credit agreements and loan documents, all tied to entities I controlled. "I'm here because Heartstone has significant concerns about current leadership. Concerns about over-leverage, missed targets, and strategic failures." I turned to Maggie directly. "You paid me $175,000 to leave your family, Margaret. You told me I was barren, worthless." My voice didn't shake. "I'm here to inform you that the woman you tried to buy off is now your largest shareholder. I control your lenders. I control your suppliers. I control whether Carter Group survives the next quarter." The room was silent except for the air conditioning hum. Maggie's face cycled through emotions. "This is absurd. You're a bank clerk. This is fraud." "It's not fraud." Danny handed out bound documents. Ms. Hart's father was Marcus Hart, a venture capitalist. When he died, Olivia inherited controlling interests in multiple holding companies, including Heartstone. An older board member flipped through the documents. "This is legitimate." Maggie slammed her hand on the table. "She seduced my son to get access. I met your son before I knew anything about Carter Group. I married him because I loved him, and you threw me out like garbage." I advanced the slide. New terms appeared. Margaret Carter resigns from the board immediately. Thomas steps aside for an interim CEO. Full forensic audit. Liam keeps his position at reduced capacity, but I will never be his wife again. I placed both hands on my belly. The baby kicked, visible through my dress. Several board members' eyes dropped to the movement. Maggie's gaze finally landed on my stomach and stayed there. I watched realization dawn. No, she whispered. Yes. 10 weeks along the night you paid me to disappear, Margaret. You called me Barren while I was carrying your grandchild. The room exploded in murmurs. Liam stood, knocking his chair backward. Liv, sit down, Liam. He sat. I have 72 hours to vote on Hearthstone's proposed governance changes, I told the board. After that, I call the loans. Any questions? Silence. Meeting adjourned. I walked out with my head high, leaving chaos in my wake. Do you think Olivia went too far, or was this justice? Tell me in the comments. Liam showed up at my penthouse 3 days later. The doorman called first. I almost said no, but some part of me wanted to see his face one more time. Send him up. I was in the nursery arranging tiny clothes when the elevator opened. Liv? I walked out to the living room. He stood by the windows staring at the view he'd never known I had. When he turned and saw me, swollen belly and all, his face crumpled. It's true. Yes. When? 10 weeks along the night your mother handed me that check. I found out that morning, had an ultrasound in my purse. He closed his eyes. God, Liv. Why are you here? I didn't know about the money. Your father, I swear. I know, that was the point. That's not fair. Isn't it? My voice rose. You sat there when your mother called me Barren, told me to disappear. You didn't say one word. Not one. I was scared. Of what? Her? Losing their approval? I stepped closer. I was your wife, carrying your child, and you said nothing. I know. Tears streamed down his face. I was a coward. I lost everything because of it. You threw it away. Silence stretched between us. Is it mine? He asked quietly. I could have lied, but I thought about my son, what I'd want him to know. Yes. His knees buckled. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. I abandoned my own child. You abandoned me first. I'm sorry. Let me be a father. I'll do anything, follow any rules. Just don't take him from me. I studied him. This man who'd failed every test. But he was still my son's father. I didn't stand next to you when you needed me, I said quietly. You were afraid of losing everything. You did lose everything. You just didn't realize everything was sitting across from you. He sobbed. I'll let you be a father, on my terms. Supervised visits, prove you can stand on your own, and we'll see. But the marriage is over, Liam. I will never be your wife again. I understand. You can go now. At the elevator, he paused. You were magnificent in that boardroom. I learned to be magnificent alone because you weren't there to see it. The doors closed on his stricken face. 6 weeks later, I held my son for the first time. Henry Marcus Hart, 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Perfect. Dr. Patel coached me through delivery at Austin General. Danny held my hand, cracking terrible jokes. When Henry arrived, purple and screaming, they placed him on my chest. Hi, baby. I'm your mama. I've got you. Liam visited 3 hours later. I'd texted him when labor started as a courtesy. He'd waited in the lobby until Danny gave permission. Can I hold him? I hesitated, then nodded. He washed his hands 3 times before lifting Henry with shaking hands. Tears ran down his face. He's beautiful. I know. Over the following weeks, Liam proved himself in small ways, followed every rule, visited during approved windows, never pushed, brought diapers without being asked. He'd moved to a modest apartment and taken a job at a tech startup, away from Carter Group entirely. It didn't fix what he'd broken, but it was something. The Carter empire crumbled as designed. Hearthstone's vote passed. Maggie was removed. Thomas retired. A professional CEO took over, and within months the company stabilized. I sold my shares back at a modest profit. enough to sting but not destroy. Maggie tried suing for grandparents' rights. I had Danny respond with a timeline of every cruel thing she'd said, documented by Rosa. The lawsuit disappeared. Thomas sent a handwritten apology 3 months later. When Henry was 6 months old, I invited him for one supervised hour. He brought a stuffed elephant and played peekaboo until Henry laughed himself to hiccups. Maggie, I kept away. Some bridges don't deserve rebuilding. One evening, watching Henry sleep, I thought about revenge versus peace. The boardroom victory felt good, but this quiet life I'd built, with boundaries I enforced and respect I demanded, this was better. The real victory wasn't owning their company or proving I wasn't Barren. It was looking at my son, knowing no one could ever buy or bully us out of our own lives again. If you've ever been underestimated, treated like a nobody by people who should have valued you, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Tell me what you would have done in my place. Would you have taken the money, fought back, forgiven differently? And if this story resonated with you, if you believe that women should have their own money, their own power, and the courage to walk away from people who don't see their worth, hit that subscribe button. I have more stories where karma comes with receipts and where the nobody turns out to be the most powerful person in the room. Remember this, your value isn't decided by the people who try to price you, it's decided by you. And no check, no matter how big, can buy your self-respect. My name is Olivia Hart. I'm a mother, a billionaire, and a woman who learned that the best revenge is living well on your own terms, with boundaries no one can cross. Thanks for listening. And to my son, if you're reading this years from now, Mama loves you, always did, always will. You were worth every battle. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a diaper to change and an empire to run. If you made it to the end, write justice in the comments so I know you're part of the family. And don't forget to like and share this story with anyone who needs to hear it. See you in the next one.